Okay. I don't know who exactly ever checks our YouTube channel and views any of our meetings. And honestly, I don't have every single meeting up there. So there might have been something where I said something I probably shouldn't have. But you can always ask me for a recording, and if I haven't got that particular meeting up. So I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we have a record-breaking 9 people here. That means we actually have a quorum, which is great because we have, I think 18 is our official membership when we are last summer had our elections again. So if we wish to conduct any business, we can, although I guess I have to discount Jason's not a member of our Iowa Democratic Party. But I really enjoy how he comes to our meetings. Cannot figure out where to put my captions. If you want captions, they are at the bottom, the CC button. And one thing about Zoom is I'm always having to move the captions around for myself and figure out, where it can go, because if someone doesn't have their camera on, then it kind of makes it easy for me. I can just put the captions across their video. So calling this meeting to order, the Iowa Democratic Party's Disability Caucus in June. And I believe that we're going to be taking the month of August off, because that is, for one thing, it's my daughter's birthday. It's just a really busy month, and it's usually the traditional month a lot of people are going on vacation, although I won't expressly be taking any time off that way myself. Our vacations are strictly staycations these days. So I want to start off with just if you haven't actually introduced yourself to any of these people before, we're going to go around and do quick introductions. We have a couple new people, so I would appreciate if everyone just said a few words about who they are and how you found us. And maybe what county you're in. Garrett, you want to go first? Yeah. I know we all know you, but there's a couple that don't.
A lot of people I haven't met before. So I'm Garrett Fry. My Facebook is quite different right now. But I'm from Cedar Rapids, Lake County. I have a disability, which is I have a spinal cord injury. So I'm paralyzed from the neck down and on a ventilator. And I've been a member of the Caucus probably 2020 or right before that. And I try to remain active with disability advocacy and networking with a lot of other people, trying to help them get services and whatever is needed. I try my best to do so. So thank you very much. I can pass it on if you'd like. Let's have Jordan go if he's available.
Good, we could popcorn it. That's a good idea.
Thanks, Garrett. Hey, I'm Jordan. I am in Des Moines, Polk County. I grew up in North Iowa, Mason City. Went to the Navy for about 8 years. And after a couple of years of grad school, I moved back here about a year ago. And I'm just trying to be involved in the community however I can. I did get appointed to the state advisory council on brain injuries. So I'll officially be on that in July. it's technically an appointment by Kim Reynolds, but she doesn't really have much to do with the board. Yeah. How about, let me look at this list. Jason.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Todd Morris. I'm from Seattle, Washington. How I got connected with the disability community is I was in special ed K through 12 in a segregated, unequal classroom. And I was the DNC vice chair of the Western region. And that's how I got involved in disabilities as a political advocate. And I like attending these events and getting the landscape of people's views and issues going on. Thanks. How about Lori?
Hi, I'm Lori Yonke. I live in Davenport, which is Scott County. Grew up in Muscatine, not very far away. I was brought into the disability community first through my daughter. She has some different learning disabilities, autism, etc., which brought me to my role of advocating for disability education within the schools, and ended up with a placement at the state board's panel for special education, which is very cool. Throughout that process, I discovered that I was neurodivergent myself, which actually answered a lot of questions from my childhood. So, I mean, that was a good discovery there for me. And think I've been part of this group for at least a year. I think I found you guys around COVID time, so it doesn't seem that long, but I guess looking at the calendar, it was a few years ago. So let me see who is in this group. How about Madeline?
Hi, I joined a little bit late, so I don't actually know what's happening right now.
Oh, sorry, it's just introducing yourself. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. And I'm also in the car right now. We just got home. I'm Madeline. I live in Sheldon in O'Brien County. I am the 4th District Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair. I have ADHD and I am autistic. So I didn't get diagnosed until I was 19, so as an adult. And it's been an experience learning about myself, and again, answered questions from my childhood, and I am learning about it every day and still learning how to advocate for myself and other people. I don't know who hasn't gone yet either.
How about AJ? You might unmute, please.
Hi, I'm AJ. I live in Knoxville, Marion County. I am on the spectrum, and one of the things that I would really like to see is a lot more inclusivity for people on the spectrum, and especially in the education system. In the grades 1st through 3rd grade, I was in a special education program, and if it weren't for the teachers in 4th through 6th grade, I would probably not have excelled in school. So those things are really important to me, and seeing how I can get involved and raise awareness, and this, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional
Good.
there.
You're good.
Just raise awareness with people I do some writing to do that. And I got involved actually through Jen. She kind of led me here.
Cool. Jen, you may as well say something then.
Yes, that's a good segue. Thanks, AJ. And thanks, Julie. I found the Disability Caucus through you, Julie. And so thank you for your work on a number of fronts. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in Montezuma, which is in Poweshiek County. I just moved back to Iowa from Philadelphia about 4 years ago and have been learning how to get organized through a variety of groups. And I'm excited to be here. Like a number of you, I'm late diagnosed with a number of neurodivergences, including ADHD and likely on the spectrum. So I get to learn a lot and all the time, and I'm really appreciative of this community. Thank you. Let's see.
Thanks. We just had someone come into our chat. Derek, he is, well, I'm going to say hi, and I don't know if you want to use your app to introduce yourself, or what would you like to do?
I'm Derek Pike. Speech is hard. My side is I motorcycle accident. Yeah.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah.
Ruth, would you like to go?
Yes, I'm 82, so I've done a lot of things, but I won't bore you with the things that don't apply. I don't have close people with disabilities, but I'm always interested in listening, so I know how to advocate. I taught 1 year math and science in a little school outside of Iowa City, and it was a farm community that. Catholics, it had been a Catholic school, but the Catholic Church ran out of money. And in those days, the Catholic families had big families. So every family, and they were all related, had like 7 or 8 kids, right? And they still had to educate them. So it was a K through 12 school that didn't have a town there. But several of the children in these families had Down syndrome. And at that time, the official thing said it wasn't inherited. But I wondered, since several sisters each had, of course, they had a number of children as well, maybe just the percentages, I don't know, or they might have been older when the last baby was born, I don't know. They in those days, Down syndrome children were not taught, and nobody thought they could learn. But then they rarely lived to be more than 20 either. They usually died by the time they were in their teens. Well, then when we lived in Washington, D.C., my husband had graduated from Iowa City and studied astronomy, so he got a Naval Observatory. And when we lived in Arlington, Virginia for about 3 years, we had a neighbor family with a little boy who had Down syndrome. And so I watched them. It's like they had taken him to Maryland to a children's clinic. They actually were going to move to the Maryland side of DC so they'd be closer so he could go to school. He was about 5 when we moved to Flagstaff where the big telescopes are. But by that time, because I was in communication with Darla, the mom, and by that time they knew that some types of Down syndrome were inherited. And so I was very much interested. And then actually I got interested in this because I try to listen to the things I don't know about when Catherine Christ was running it. It's like before Julie took over. When I can, I check in.
Thanks. I guess Julie number 2, that's kind of what we kind of say, because I'm 1, you're 2, just to differentiate.
Okay, I'm originally from Des Moines, but I've been up here in Palo Alto County in West Bend, home of the grotto, for 45 years. My husband and I just had our 43rd anniversary yesterday. And thanks. And I think I've been a member about 2 years, and I honestly don't remember how I found the group or the group found me. I don't recall. I've been an advocate for our daughter who is learning disabled, and as a teacher, I don't know, I've had many students that needed support and advocating for, and anyway, so this group just kind of attracted me to their mission.
Thanks. I'll go last. Julie Russell Stewart, most of you know me, and I'm glad you've all found your way here. We've got a great number of people on meeting tonight. And some of what you were just saying in your introductions, especially about the autism spectrum, is actually on my mind a lot, because my daughter, who is 17, has sort of self-diagnosed herself as being possibly on the spectrum. And I think I would have to agree. We just went down to the University of Iowa, though, and they ran through a checklist and said, no. And, I know, because she's been telling me, I know I'm getting off topic here with introductions, but I just wanted to say this. Maybe I'll be reaching out to some of you for how to navigate some of these things, because it's really eye-opening. And the fact that she's studied so much of this stuff on her own and said, yep, that checks a box, and has ADHD also. We already knew that from an early age. So the fact that they didn't diagnose kind of points to that problem between how does it represent or present in different people, right? Especially women versus men, maybe. I see you all nodding your heads. So yeah, we weren't really too happy with absolutely no help, nothing. And I guess maybe I'll email you, or just, I'm not sure what exactly ways to cope are. We're kind of having a difficult time right now, I'll say that. But the rest of my introduction is I am deaf with a little d, which means that I use hearing aids and I don't know sign language, although it's in my plans to. And I live in Grundy County, which is a very red county, southwest of Waterloo, Cedar Falls area. And I've been really fortunate to get involved with the Disability Caucus, because it's given me a great focus, and it's given me, a lot of energy in terms of knowing people and knowing that I'm helping people in Iowa, and especially helping Democrats in Iowa get access to what they should be part of, where voices should be heard, all voices should be heard. So accessibility within meetings, been constantly working on, and I'll go into that a little bit more later with our updates. So anyway, I'm really glad that you're all here. It's really great. Thank you for the notes in the in the chat here. Definitely overlapping symptoms. Okay, I might just start a little group here, like an email thread, maybe, if that would be okay. Okay, great. So I'm gonna start with the first part of our meeting, and I actually have a screen share. This is just by way of working out what I wanted to have our meeting focused on, was to kind of visually put it together in a PowerPoint. It said it failed to start. My screen share failed to start for some reason. We'll see whether, oh, it looks like it's not going to happen. I'm going to try one more thing and see if it works. Well, I have an error code and I don't have time to do that. So I'm going to flip to my slides for myself. And my chair report. I wish I could share the slide with you, but I could probably email this out to, the whole group, our big group, which includes our discussion members and our caucus members. We had an SCC meeting on June 3rd, and Rita Hart, who is the new Iowa Democratic Party chair, presented various plans, and I honestly think she's doing a really good job in terms of bringing her skills to bear on this. She's been doing a lot of actively organizing, which is great. One of the things is we recently in January adopted a steering committee for the SCC. I'm going to go back to my view of you guys. Okay, that's better. So we recently have adopted a steering committee, which is made up of some SCC members, about 5 SCC members, and one of the members was specifically included so that they could represent rural Iowans, represent counties that have a population of like less than 25,000, I think. So that was one thing that was lobbied for in terms of getting more representation onto this executive steering committee. Unfortunately, the caucuses were not included in the process of putting this committee together at all. So that's kind of a little bit of a sore point, but I have people on the committee that I know will back me up if there's any kinds of accessibility questions or, anything to do with that. So I'm pretty confident that we'll be represented fairly. And there's also a new person on the steering committee by virtue of her position. I don't know if you heard the news about Zach Walls was removed from his position at the Iowa Senate Democrats minority leadership role because he fired 2 longtime staffers that had been working there for 25 years without expressly getting permission or asking anyone. I mean, he had the authority to do that, but he was fired from that position. And Pam Yocum, who is senator and very much a disability rights advocate and has been for years with, representation, and has personal experience also with family members being disabled. She is going to be on the steering committee because it includes the Senate minority leader automatically. So Zach lost his position, which some people are saying that is really too bad because he was the driving force behind that steering committee being put together. Anyway, so that's kind of what's happened with that. But I do see a little bit of a silver lining in terms of having Pam on our side, especially as we go into what kinds of things the steering committee will be discussing, which includes the caucus, presidential caucus process, the delegate selection plan that we all voted on at this meeting, and having, they're calling it very accessible. And the reason that is the case is because the presidential preference card is going to be a mail-in. any Iowa Democrat can now participate by mail with their caucus, but there's going to be two parts to it. Two parts are this mail-in card, and the other part, which happens first, is going to be the caucus. That will take place. It will take place in person, I believe. But what won't happen at that is all that going to one side or the other room, splitting into presidential preferences will not happen at the caucus, but they will take care of business. They will elect delegates that are not going to be pledged to any certain candidate yet. Then later on, they will do this mail-in preference card. And the mail-in part has to be within the date range that the DNC is allowing. So they said, okay, Iowa, you can't go first anymore. So we're complied by splitting up the thing to a caucus on the same day the Republicans are doing it. That's just going to handle county party business, electing delegates, basically that kind of thing. And then later on, this mail-in card. So on this meeting, I spoke up to say, okay, if we're going to have mail-in cards, how do we make sure that these vendors that you work with have got an accessibility plan for those mail-in preference cards? How is it being mailed to every Democrat? I think so. Is there going to be a way someone who is blind can get help to fill this out? Is there, going to be a way people can get it to the post office box? Maybe there'll be some facilities where disabled people live that will have a main pickup point rather than a postal point, or so there's questions I had in general on that. And is there, as we talk about all these things, I would appreciate anyone bringing in the neurodivergence aspects too. Please feel free to put your hand up and say, oh, maybe this would help, because I don't know. It's an awfully high learning curve to know exactly what all people's different disabilities require for accommodations. So what would help? Feel free to mention that. So in the meeting, Rita Hart responded to me and she said, yes, we'll make sure any vendors that we work with have got some kind of accessibility plan, and we'll be looking at that. And I feel pretty confident in her, but at the same time, I'm thinking, how do we, talk with them as they go through this process? Now that the steering committee is going to be making decisions that they will still most of the time be working with the entire state central committee by doing reports and sharing, and also allowing any state central committee member to attend. And that means myself or Garrett, our vice chair, can attend these meetings too, although we cannot speak. We can watch. So, as this process of the presidential caucuses unrolls, how can we make sure that we are retaining accessibility? And I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I'm planning on reaching out to Pam Yoakum and Rita both, and just saying, okay, how do we be a little bit more involved in the process? We're here to assist. How can we, with all our different perspectives on what accessibility means to us, help this so that all Iowa Democrats have this opportunity to make their voices her in their preference there. Okay, so that was an important point, and then Sarah Young Bear Brown, who is staff, and she's the Native American Caucus chair. She spoke up and said, now with all of the presidential hopefuls maybe passing over Iowa and not coming through, not focusing on Iowa, social media is going to be so much more important in getting these candidates' messages out. Whoever they are, whether it be Happy or Democratic candidates or not, I'm not sure. But I know Cornel West just announced his Green Party, which is interesting, his Green Party candidacy. So her point was social media needs to be accessible to those that are deaf, those that are blind or low vision, captioning obviously for people like me. And that, there could be more things. Obviously, I think the contrast, when you visually have something that has to have enough contrast, that's really standard. But there could be more things that we need to think of. I'm going to look at the suggestions in the side here. Scanton type forms where you fill in bubbles. Okay, that's a really good point. So like if the presidential card was a bubble fill in, that would be hard to deal with for some people. What kind of form would be the best type to fill in, or what kind of what would you suggest, Madeline, instead?
Julie, I think that they have machines that will assist. They used to. I've not been a election official since COVID because there was no vaccination in 2020, and I'm old. But
talking about presidential preference card, actually.
Yeah, I know this is a little different, but I'm thinking for elections that maybe people don't understand, and I assume they still have them. The people, even when we had a lady once who'd had eye surgery the day before, so she had dark glasses on temporarily, but she needed assistance, and we said, well, you can use the machine that will put the dots where you want them, and it will tell you via the ears if you can't see, right? It's fixed so that it'll work. Or it's vision and you can't hear as well. They worked really well. They had us try them. But she elected to have us assist her instead. So there had to be one Democrat and one Republican election,
right.
Supervising. But I think that, and I doubt that, well, for this, they wouldn't have something like that. It's just the party.
Well, since you don't go anywhere, you can fill out the card for the caucuses in your home.
Chris and I, sorry.
Go ahead.
For the caucus cards, if it's not going to be a fill in the bubble, the accommodation that I have as a student is that I am either able to circle my answer or write in my own answer instead of trying to fill in the bubble.
Okay.
And for the machines, they do still have those. Chris and I are election officials every year, but there's only one of them in each precinct. So it takes a lot of time sometimes to use those machines, and people don't always have that time. And the training on them is not good for the election officials. So that takes extra time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the training was good when they first got them. They had us, and then because so few people, I mean, we never had anybody use it, but then this was in North Cedar. It was a really small precinct. Actually, it was 2 precincts together, but still it was really small, rural. But I imagine that, they don't review it very well every time. And some people don't show up to the training.
Yeah, at least in O'Brien County, the training is not great. But I make sure as the precinct election official to train everyone else to do it, because I use it every year because I have problems with the bubbles. So I know how to use it.
Yeah, so
And
so
it's
maybe
hard
Julie
to ask
can-
for assistance. I don't think election officials can provide assistance to voters like that anymore. We can only be a witness to somebody else doing it.
Oh, no, I'm sure. I think the law says you have to be able to, if you, even if you had to write, you know, you
Yeah.
could not speak, they have to have a Republican and a Democrat
Yeah, and I
together.
think maybe
And a
that,
lot of times they have to stop the line to do that because there aren't enough help otherwise.
yeah,
but
I think that might be the problem. Just, it doesn't happen very often, but there is only one of those machines. So it
Mhm.
takes a lot of time that sometimes people don't have.
Yeah, and that it would work to write them in or circle them. Maybe Julie can work with that to make sure that there's an option.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, the presidential preference card. It's not going to be too many names on that. I mean, it'll be really easy to circle that.
And yeah, maybe you could suggest that it would be good for elections as well. I mean, I've never heard that, well, my youngest daughter didn't like the bubbles. She didn't like bubble tests, and she was a good student, but you know, hey, she just didn't like them. So I get that, but that there is an option that works for you is interesting. And for elections, that ought to be a choice as well. Yeah, and of course, if you elected to do that, it can't go through the machine for counting, but it still should count. But it's good to know that, I think, that would help.
They still feed it in, actually, like for write-in votes and everything. Even if you only do write-ins and fill in no bubbles, we just have to read them all at the end of the night. So, I mean, that could be an option.
There may be more machines this time around, the accessible voting machines. I tried one out last fall down at the ADA celebration in Iowa City, where it was a touch screen. It was fairly easy to use. I'm going to move over to one of the comments in the chat. Jordan True said, my biggest thing is designing intentionally around accessibility needs to be done around the main ballot because many people don't know what they need or what the options are. Jordan, do you mean that there needs to be more education about what the options are for people with disabilities?
Yeah, so like part of it is it's generally difficult to find, you know, what accommodations are available. And then actually figuring out how to request that. If that was like on the ballots, or if we made sure like in anything being mailed out to prepare people like beforehand, you know, like if I mean, but yeah, just being able to list those things and have them available. And then I just was typing, I don't know if I sent it yet, but you know, and then if we do have accommodations for some, if we take out the issue of like a burden of proof, that one takes out a layer of administration, but two, people don't have to worry about either having a diagnosis, having the right forms or recommendations and things like that. Because especially if it's just within the party, we don't have to worry as much about, you know, certain regulations. And I don't think people will be as worried about people getting an accommodation if maybe they didn't need it. You know, maybe someone doesn't have a specific issue that large text will help or something, but if they just want large text, you know, and like I don't even know what all the accommodations are available because I haven't needed them, but I just have never honestly known what was out there.
There's an option to vote from your car for the elections as well. there's always got to be a handicapped parking spot marked. And they have signs to mark it if it didn't already go at that location. And the election officials will come to your car and help you vote if you can't even go in. So anybody that has problems like that could even elect to have the election officials come to the car and assist.
Hey, Julie,
Yeah,
this is Susan. I was wondering if we could ask them to, now I'm not going to remember the name of the code, but you know how they put little codes on things and you take a picture of your camera and it takes you to a website?
oh, a barcode or a QR code?
QR
QR
code.
code.
Yeah.
I was wondering if they could put a QR code, excuse me, on the ballot where someone who suffers from dyslexia could take a picture of it, and then it would take them to a site that would read the ballot for them, so that there was no misunderstanding with, you know, who they were voting for, or you know, what the process is. They could read it to them.
Are you thinking in terms of the main election or on the
No, I was thinking in
cards,
terms
presidential
of
preference cards?
the
Easily
preference cards,
read it. Yeah,
the preference cards.
I like that idea because that actually could be used for everyone, you know.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I was just thinking that, I mean, yeah, maybe you have somebody that could read it to you, but you know, maybe it would be a big deal for you to find someone, and you know, and then you'd wonder, gee, did they really read it to me the way it is? I don't know what they're even going to look like, but it was a thought.
That's a great idea because
I
yeah,
was
you could have a screen reader, you know, an accommodation, and maybe your computer is already set up for your accessibility, like I have on. If I start playing a video on this computer, my caption like window pops up and I start getting captioning, and it's been a real lifesaver lots of times. So kind of a similar way for the reader to, you know, read something out, and then you could still mark your card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could still be basically the mail-in. It could just be, and that way it's actually available. And that seems like a really simple, small website page to have. It does not sound hard at all.
Yeah, it's just a thought. I don't know if that's something they would feel like they needed to do or not, but you know, I've had friends that are dyslexic, and I know it is a struggle for them.
I love that idea. It makes me think of my youngest. She has a severe language disorder, and she uses devices like that, apps like that all the time that read to her. So that way there's not that confusion, and that would be a lifesaver for her, because, you know, thinking as she grows older and can vote, I'm not sure, unless someone was along to assist her, you know, the reading aspect of it, if she would I mean, she would understand it's voting, obviously, but you know, just being able to read the ballot, because sometimes those ballots are confusing, whether it's a general election or a local election, or even just, you know, picking your person for the caucus. I mean, we don't even have to go into how nutty the caucus can be. So, I mean, thing like that would just greatly assist her, especially if she could do that, where she already has the technology she's familiar with that would launch it for her. And yeah, brilliant idea. Yay, Susan. Thank you. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And I'm still reading over in the chat a little bit. I heard Jordan really talking about educating people so that you know what options you have, and also making it more democratic, if you will. So you don't have to specially ask for something, just making it available. But a big part of that is people need to know that it's available. So like for the QR code example, how are we gonna make it clear that you can do this. The Iowa Democratic Party, if they use this QR code idea, they're going to have to really kind of launch a campaign of education for all these different accommodations people can use, so that they know about it. It's not as if
honestly-
like people with disabilities magically know everything going on. I mean,
But honestly, shouldn't the state group, the state Democratic group, shouldn't they be launching that campaign anyway? Because I mean, we're having this discussion right now in our small group, and I'm learning things about different opportunities that different disabilities would have, and the struggles faced to vote, just a simple vote. I mean, this is really something where I feel our general party has failed. So they should really be launching this. I mean, if we're a platform that they care about, I mean, it shouldn't be I don't know.
I think
I'm definitely
generally, I,
taking these things to Rita and calling her personally to talk about all this, because, you know, this is exactly what she said she would do. She said, yes, we'll work with the Disability Caucus. She said, and we'll make sure these vendors that we are working with also are, you know, going to be supporting that. I mean, they should be a vendor that doesn't just have, we only do this, this, and this. They should be a vendor that works with you, right? So that would be an important aspect too.
the training for officials, election officials at the precinct is to ask every voter if they want assistance. And if this, you know, then unless they hear something, I mean, somebody has to respond that they need someone, and then what kind of help they need. But, you know, it's very rare that somebody, maybe they just don't hear the question. They're busy trying to figure out where to go next or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a confusing day to begin with. If we're talking about the elections, the polls and all that. So adequate training, definitely. There's another message here. Jordan said the more accessible it is from the start, the more people will be served. But we also need to make it easy to find and request the available accommodations. Accommodations will be granted to some. We should make them available to all to prevent official diagnosis of short-term issues from not being helped. Yeah, I agree, Garrett. Could we send this recorded to Rita Hart and Pam Yoko? Yes, we should. This is great. Okay, and maybe, you know, maybe some of you would like to offer more of your insight. Maybe they'll end up asking us to meet with them at some point and talk about all this. And that would be great, because Rita is literally saying Iowa is proud to have one of the most accessible caucus, you know, processes now. They're really, really pushing the accessible factor, because, you know, mostly you don't have to go to a caucus anymore and play musical chairs with anyone, with all that stuff, and make the time and effort to be there and all that stuff. But just the fact that it's a mail-in card does not automatically make it perfect. So we need to work on this whole concept. So great. Does anyone have any other suggestions for those preference cards right now? Anything that would make it easier for you or someone else that you know?
They're gonna be mailed to us. So how do they know, or how can they guarantee that each Democrat or party affiliate will receive one of these?
How do we make sure all Democrats get this? That's a question they're going to be trying to answer.
Right. Because
I'm gonna surely look at the registration rolls and go from there.
yeah, 'cause I know for me, all they look at is if I'm registered, if I am, like, what is it, a person living in Iowa or whatnot, or whatever county is the thing of my state or county or precinct, I think, but, yeah, I just question how they're gonna go about it, but it's, I guess it's gonna be a trial run the first time around to see how this works and whatnot. I have not had any trouble before, but I know I have had times where I ran the caucus and I just needed additional help. So I gathered a couple of friends and they helped me out with the caucuses. But with the presidential card or these preferential cards, I just wonder if we have everybody sign up that needs to be or not.
I wonder if that will tie into the active, inactive registrations.
I was just gonna say that because hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't remember, of people were notified last spring that since they had voted in the last election, they're now inactive and they have to reactivate, and it gives them some options on how to do that. Here in Palo Alto, we're getting together this week. We've got a list of Democrats that were inactivated, and we're gonna be sending out postcards to everybody, tell them to, get it done and get back on the roll.
Yeah, Deb Vandergast has a whole program that she's working actively on in, I think it's Cedar County, or the Tipton area where she is. She's making a big effort in her tri-state, or I mean tri-county area to get people's voter registration active again, because so many people were kicked off. And that's going to be local. If you have the opportunity to help with your local Democrats, work on those, it should be something that maybe each county wants to do. Each Democratic county organization should try to do something like this. Make sure people are not without their vote.
If I would like to visit with Deb, what did you say her last name was?
Deb Vandergast. And I will make a note that you'd like to visit with her, Susan.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. She ran for office but did not succeed. Okay. I think that topic is about exhausted, unless anyone else has something more to say on that. But I think we've got a real good start. So pleased with the ideas, especially the QR code. And we're going to try to show that we're thinking outside what people are generally concerned with. So let's make this as broad and inclusive as possible.
And it should help to know what to advocate for the election process to be more inclusive. I mean, right now you're concerned, of course, about the caucus vote for the president, but a lot of these ideas can be implemented to make it better for the official elections too. Yeah, and if we're done with that total, I do know a little more about the change in the head of the Iowa Democratic Party, because Sunday evening was the Blackhawk County Central Committee meeting, and I'm on the Central Committee, and we have a couple of senators, state senators, and they both were there, and they told us about it. That it was, and they said it was like, Zach is just not very experienced. And he had the right to fire people, and he just thought he'd get people that he on. But because it's the Democratic Party policy to have a reason to fire, I mean, document it and whatever, because we don't like people fired without cause, right? It's like, it was against, and he understood that, Zach understood that. And he even seconded the nomination and proposed that it be a unanimous vote. So both of the senators said that the Democratic senators are more on board together than they, at the end of the meeting, than they were at the beginning. And that I thought was helpful to me to know, because from the news, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I don't claim to know the ins and outs of everything that happened at all. It can be challenging to effect change. I do know that. And sometimes sudden change can be too much for people. I understand he was restructuring the, staffing, and there was someone he hired that is not going to be able to work there because,
The Blackhawk County Democratic senators seem to think that things were just fine, that they're going on, and Zach understood, and everybody's on board.
Okay, well, yeah, so
I don't know, it kind of,
I remember what I was gonna
We
say
just-
something about it, the election accessibility. At the last election, we had Sarah Young Bear Brown, who, as you gather, I've kind of advocated with quite a bit. She in Council Bluffs, since they have the Iowa School for the Deaf, which is a large population, just in general, probably the largest population in Iowa of deaf people. She asked for accommodations. She asked for ASL at her election precinct in Council Bluffs. And she was told that she couldn't have it because it was written materials already. Well, and there actually seems to be a common problem in understanding accommodations for the deaf, which is that you should be accommodated in your language. Well, written English is not considered a native language to someone who is deaf and uses ASL. So she asked for the interpreter, and when they weren't able to arrange that, she had a friend of hers who is an interpreter help her, with the understanding that maybe the party will pay for that interpretation. The auditor's office, the auditor's office. I'm not sure if they ever did, but she gathered as many of her deaf colleagues as she could to have one day of ASL assisted voting in Council Bluffs. So that it shouldn't have happened that way, because there needs to be better education on what actually is accommodating, and the person that gets the accommodation is supposed to be the one that decides. It isn't the auditor saying, no, you're accommodated because you have written materials that you can read. Nope, that's not actually right. And unfortunately, I heard from Gretchen Brown Welch, who also helped with this issue. We were all kind of involved trying to figure out how we could help. She said that even most disability rights lawyers don't understand this distinction, which is interesting. Or, election officials don't understand this distinction, that it should be the person with a disability who decides what is accommodating to them. So, I have kind of a lot that I could be doing with Sarah Young Bear Brown. It keeps going because her question about how do we make our social media more accessible? If candidates want to get their word out and they want people's votes and they want people with disabilities to be included, then they better make their material accessible. So it's a tall order, you know, and I don't know exactly what the approach would be. You know, say Biden's team is, we're going to be spreading all this information through social media channels in Iowa, and we're going to take out ads and all that stuff you're going to see on your feed. An ad from Biden coming through. Well, is there going to be an ad? And I don't know how to make this work, you know, but how are you going to get fed the ad that has ASL? Or is there going to be something on an ad that says, for ASL, click here and you can go to it? I mean, it's sort of a huge technological question is how could this be done? And how could our Iowa Democratic Party actually demand this from candidates? And it seems like we're going to have to reach broadly, maybe through other disability caucuses, other states' disability caucuses, and, you know, and also through the DNC. I have an email into the new chair of DNC Disability Caucus, and she hasn't responded to my contact form, but I was intending to ask her, you know, what kinds of, you know, advocacy she was working on, but also in terms of the election, what kinds of things could be improved. Because right now, I think with technology moving so quickly, we need to jump on that. Those of us that are technically thinking about this, technically able, I mean, I love tech. I think about it all the time. I do social media, and I try to make things clear, but how do I contract some ASL interpreter to do this? And actually, I do know that ASL is still very much a human-oriented job. I know that there's some AI programs that are saying that they can do that. They can do that translation from ASL or to ASL. And I don't know about that. I've barely looked into that. But what I've read so far is there really is no substitute, because there's context, there's different colloquialisms, there's, I mean, the language itself, there's no one size fits all in terms of it. So the need for ASL interpreters actually could go way up based on social media, you know, use, which is really cool, because that would be, you know, a job that people can get into, for one thing. And anyway, I'm just brainstorming here, but there's going to be more things besides ASL for low vision, for blind, for the idea of the QR code definitely comes in here, I think, for social media. You know, the idea that you could go somewhere and have it read to you. That's great. Anyway, I'm going to be quiet and let you guys talk for a minute on this.
I was thinking, Julie, that you suppose it would be possible to have it on the registration card somewhere that you needed assistance, so that once they pulled you up they knew you needed assistance. And, you know, it's like part of the registration process. Of course, I don't know what it would take to get that through, but it might be helpful. You know, it's like even when we had, you know, on elections, the books and whatever, if there was an asterisk that meant this person might, and maybe even details about what kind of access help they needed. So make sure that we could get it where it needed to be. I mean, I'm just thinking about long-time goals. I mean, unless you know that there's a need that's not being met.
For general voter registration, you mean?
I'm sorry?
Do you mean for voter registration, not necessarily caucus or?
Well, yeah, but voter registration would make it so it was on the voter rolls. So that if the Democrats pull the Democrats for their stuff, it would be noted.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
even if there was something, I mean, maybe the kind of access they needed, or, you know, a clue for somebody to contact them to see what we need to have ready to make it right. I think a lot of it is a lack of knowing.
My first thought is that a privacy violation at all? Or does anyone have any thoughts on whether that's okay to ask in terms of registration?
I was kind of wondering if it might be
Yeah.
a privacy violation, or if people wouldn't be comfortable giving that information, just like at voter registration. Later in the process, maybe, but at voter registration, I don't know. And I was thinking that with the QR codes too. I know a lot of people my age and a little bit younger wouldn't scan just like a random QR code because they might not trust the source.
Okay, that's a good thing to like. I suppose if you scanned a QR code, you might automatically get some malware or something.
A QR code will typically take you straight to a website. And websites usually have cookies attached to them, which would save your information. So like if I just received a random piece of mail with a QR code on it, I probably wouldn't scan it without looking more into it. And not everybody does that. They just see the QR code and going, I'm not scanning that, but I'm also not looking any further into it.
Yeah, I'm technically challenged. So like a QR code, I'd have to have someone else help me like actually physically do that. So unless it's like a good friend or like a family member of mine, like I don't think many would feel comfortable doing that or unable to do it. Um basically. But I was just thinking, I wonder, and I should probably do this on research, but I'm wondering, I know veterans, when they do all their, whether it's voting or whatnot, they can send it in beforehand, kind of like a mail-in ballot, but I wonder what their processes are to make it helpful, or if it is beneficial or not. With which how they do it. So I'm just brainstorming or thinking, but I know there has to be. Well, I know if you're disabled, you're eliminated to be in the service or a veteran. Or maybe veterans. Maybe we need to reach out to veterans groups to see if they have any additional information or what would work best for them. Because veterans, they're retired, but I know they can probably. Don't they have up to like a month or a couple, like a week after to tally their votes also, or is it a day or two, or what is that? I'm not sure. I'll have to look, but I was just kind of thinking what options we could look into also what we have already been. But that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Broadly, I really like the idea of a QR code, and I think that would help with accessibility, especially with younger people. But the county, not county, but like the state party would need to do a huge education thing, like expect these in the mail, and this is from us, and this is where it should take you. And I don't know if the state party is capable of or willing to do the education necessary to make that successful.
I think this is going to be a big point that we need to make, you know, in terms of our activism in whether it's polling or the presidential preference card, and how to make that information available.
It's
Time.
the ability, its ability is not like the
Voter.
it's like little bit is whatever, like the
Disability voter.
like whatever, like
You're saying that it seems unimportant to others?
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, that's kind of why
Well,
this group is so important.
no, the for the for the for the Democrat, whatever. That's what, you know.
Not sure I'm following everything.
Never mind.
I know this is going
Yeah.
to sound terrible, but I think maybe we'll have to take the tactic, or maybe a tactic that could be looked at as trying to present it as being super important is is by taking it and reminding them that it isn't just going to help the disability community. That seemed to work with telework and COVID times. If we present it in a way that, yeah, it helps us, but it's also going to up your participation of non-disabled. Because that's when it's really going to catch their interest, when we're talking beyond our small community, as sad as it is, and maybe I'm just bitter and jaded. By saying we're gonna get more people in if we do it like this. If you invest in putting the education, and that's accessible to everyone, not just the group that you forget about at election time. Yeah, I'm bitter.
Yeah.
That's where we'll get the buy-in, is we have to sell it on how it's good for them. And it's sad, but I think that's probably our best buy-in.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm just being jaded tonight. I'm sorry. I'm going back and forth between this and the Davenport City Council, watching how that is like burning down downtown. So I'm a little jaded tonight. So forgive me over that. But that's my take, is that nobody ever thought telework would be a great thing, even though it would be fantastic for the disabled community to keep us employed, until COVID hit. And then suddenly, oh my God, it's accessible.
Right.
I mean, woo, it's accessible. Everyone can do it. So that's my takeaway, is that we have to tell them how it's gonna up the number of participants. And
Yeah, I
downplay
totally
how it
agree with
helps
you.
us.
That comes down to the favorite line: elect more Democrats. because it's Democrats that have our backs, honestly. I mean, so
I
yeah,
don't know, but I would argue that the mayor of Davenport is a Democrat,
Okay.
so we'll see. We'll see.
well, just because someone's a Democrat doesn't mean they do a good job.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of bad Democrats in Scott County and Davenport, from state rep to local and city. So anyway, that's me being jaded tonight. Forgive me.
Anyway, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think we've got to keep thinking about the social media aspect because it's a tall order, but we got to start somewhere. And I actually have a meeting with the New York State Disability Caucus chair next week on Zoom. And he just contacted me on LinkedIn. And he's a young man, and he's also chair of the Young Democrats too, within his New York Democratic Party. And he just wanted to connect and see how we can help each other. And I think that definitely I should bring up. How do we make it more accessible? Information, social media, voters, what kinds of issues do they have? And New York's pretty big, so I'm excited for this meeting and see what he wants to collaborate on. And I hope that I can get in touch with the DNC chair, disability chair as well, and see what more the entire country's disability caucuses could organize to work on this. Anyway, because that's really the only way it's going to happen. You're not going to have just Iowa being accessible to social media. They just got to roll the whole thing out to say. That's the point.
And I think you're right, Lori, that, there's always things that benefit people that aren't disabled as well once they get things done. I'm thinking about the sidewalk access for wheelchairs. It's good for the bicycles and the baby strollers and everybody. You're less apt to catch your toe on a curb and, because you weren't looking. It's good for everybody. And I think Iowa Democrats remember that Senator Harkin pushed that. And the reason he thought of pushing it was because he had a brother with hearing problems. He recognized some of the problems and wanted to make it accessible. And I think people in general are good. We just don't know. That's why I show up here and I listen. I learned a lot tonight.
I think people in general are good. It's just, I think a lot of people who either are not impacted by disability, whether it's their own or a family member that they're close with, I don't think they really think about it. They just don't think about it. And so I mean, that's what we've kind of encountered as a family, is that they don't think about it because, well, it's not in their world, their myopic view. And so, I mean, that's why I thought the easiest way to sell a QR code, making things more accessible, is the benefit of those who are presented in a way that how it's going to benefit the non-disabled, because that's the fastest selling point, unfortunately.
And it's true about everything. I was retired when I went to an Undoing Racism workshop, 2.5 days with food. So it was free, so why not, right? And it's the first time, I was in my 60s, that I'd ever heard that FHA loans were originally given only to white people by law. And I was appalled. And I still have, when I tell white people, I get a lot of jaws dropping. I mean, this was in the 1930s, right? It was a long time after the Civil War, and I thought the North won. I mean, it made me more aware to go out of my way to see what else is access that's prohibiting equity with people of color, right? It's like, because unless you listen and make an effort, you don't see it if it doesn't affect you. That's why I'm here too in this. I wouldn't have a way to know.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Lori. We're getting on to 8:25, and so we're about an hour and a half into our meeting, which is fairly typical for anyone new that's wondering how long these meetings go. We kind of don't really have a hard ending time. We just like to keep discussing things because inevitably people have so much to contribute. I'm getting kind of a good idea of, where maybe some thoughts are that we can go. We definitely want to help the caucus process, the polling process, and obviously we're going to have a 2024 legislative priority session too, but I think it would be great to focus on some of these accessibility things if you all agree, and I'll spread that out to the rest of the caucus as well. But this is definitely, I am excited that Rita Hart is going so hard at the organizing. There's other things happening too that I was going to kind of update you on in terms of the SCC, but you also have your own central committee. I mean, your county central committee meetings you might already know. For example, there's like a ambassadorship program, which is going to be for all the counties. And the vice chair is Gregory Christensen. And he's sort of headlining this ambassador program for counties. The idea is to have someone in every county that acts as a way to have the state party push information to. So it's maybe not just the chair of each, county's Democratic committee, but a actual ambassador whose focus is to keep the lines of communication open between the state and the county parties. So I discovered, for example, I wrote to Gregory today and said, oh, I saw in the meeting that you have someone for Grundy County, and I don't know who that is. So I found out their name, and now I know we've got someone besides myself in Grundy County. That's really, my mind basically fell apart. And we have no chair, no treasurer, no vice chair right now in my county at all. But we've got to start because we have an ambassador. And Gregory is going to be working on van training with people through the DNC, and also working on building data teams, which is interesting. He says he's got 36 ambassadors that are covering 86% of counties. So we can imagine that's probably more than one county in some of them. So I like that idea. And we've also got new staff on board. A finance director, a communications director has been hired. Paige Godden, who has a lot of newspaper and communications experience. And then a rapid response director whose salary is paid for by the DNC, I believe. And what he will be focusing on, his name is Dawson McNamara, and he is going to be looking at the GOP's media talking points, message, and using his ability to figure out a way to respond to the GOP quickly to get information out there about how Democrats can talk back against the Republican message. So, and hold actually elected officials accountable for what they're doing. So that's interesting. And that's just 3 staff that's been hired. It's still a much smaller staff than we've had in the past. But so I think that's good.
Hey, Julie,
Yeah.
is Gregory's last name, is it Van Lacker?
Christensen.
Christensen, okay, because we just had our central committee meeting and we had a gentleman last night, and I didn't catch his first name because I was on Zoom. But his last name was Van Lacker, and he was like trying to round up recruits for the data committees and such like that.
It sounds like Eric Van Lanker, you know,
It
ran
could be,
for, he
I-
ran for auditor,
yes, and lost.
right?
Yes, he talked about that he ran and lost. I didn't catch the first name because I came in late.
And then was he Deidre's vice chair pick candidate?
Oh,
Or do I have the wrong one? No,
I'm
just
not-
not in her head. So that's the
I'm-
right one.
I missed part of his bio because I came in late to it. I mean, so much so that I did not get his first name. I only have his email address as far as if people were interested in wanting to kind of be a part of like data committees and trying to sort out like what's the most important topics, et cetera, et cetera.
Data.
So,
committees. Okay.
yeah.
Mhm.
So that's why I wondered if it was like the same person, since I didn't quite catch the name you had said.
Not the same person.
Not the same person. Okay.
What you're saying about data committees kind of sounds familiar, because one thing that they were talking about at the meeting is VAN and how VAN can be better, which is the voter database. And one thing that they want to boost up is a very little used aspect of it called relationships. Now, this kind of sounds like really giving too much information away, almost like who are you, who do you know? It's relational organizing, but apparently the VAN database has an option where you can type in relationships. So not only do you ask, you know, who they might be voting for, or, you know, registration and different, you know, different issues. I think that there are, you know, you can have like different interests as well in your voter file, but now we've got to add relational organizing to the VAN database, which is kind of interesting and kind of scary, really, to my thought. But just finishing up the SCC update here, and I think that was it for that. Well, there's going to be an executive committee retreat in August, and you know, they'll keep working on their meeting style and identify some big things that they think are priorities in terms of state central committee and decisions that need to be made. And there is one big thing that is going to be attempted, which is sort of reforming our constitution, our Iowa Democratic Party constitution, because apparently there's a lot of things that disagree with each other. You know, like you read one part of it, it says this, read another part, it appears to contradict itself. You know, this is a document that's been made over the years that people have been adding on to and trying to check, make sure they were doing something that was conflicting with another area of it, but by no means has it been really good. My concern with that is making sure that we keep our flagship worthy accessibility options in here, because we actually have that with Catherine Chris, the former disability chair, and she's the current, you know, second district chair, a very strong advocate for all of the language that is currently in there for accessibility is very good. And I don't want to lose any of that. So I do think that it's important to keep an eye on this reform, because this would be a months long process to get to the state convention where all of these items were voted on. And it will probably get, evaluated by many different people over the months before getting to that vote at state convention. And I really hope it's not going to be one thing all at once. I hope that there are going to be lots of individual points that would need to be clarified. I don't know, I'm kind of getting off track there, but you get the idea. There's yet another thing to make sure that we have retained all of those things that make the Iowa Democratic Party actually one of the most accessible in the country. And we need to protect that. I'm just taking a look at the chat here. Oh, Jason said bye a while back. Okay. One more update I wanted to say on social media. I was just taking a look. We've had a bunch of new discussion page members over the last couple months, and 24 people joined us since 2023 start, which is kind of great. And I'm glad people are finding us on Facebook. And I just added a link to the top of our discussion page that is an application for membership, because even if you're on the discussion page or attend meetings, we have a ballot if you want to become an actual member of our caucus. And I just moved that ballot to the top of the discussion page. So, it's something you can take advantage of if you have not, become an official member. You're welcome to. That means you'll be a voting member. And we don't do a whole lot of voting stuff, but we could. But anyway, continuing on our social media report. So 24 new discussion members, and I looked at, we have a public page follower number that's 360, which is pretty nice for our public facing page. Discussion is simply for internally talking about disability issues at Iowa, the Iowa Democratic Party, and it's a private group. And then our public page is allowing us just to broadcast to the world what's going on. And we have also 638 Twitter followers, which isn't bad. And we also have an Instagram page, which I forgot to write that number down because I was a little bit distracted. I noticed that I was getting tagged on our Instagram page by the Iowa House Dems. That's an account that's been tagging us lately, and they were talking about the AEA funding changes. Unfortunately, less funding for the Area Education Agency means that less people, less parents, less kids with disabilities are going to be helped. So they tagged us on that. I appreciated it. Also, the Hearing Loss Foundation of Iowa tagged us too. So Instagram is interesting too, like some of those collaborations kind of happening and sharing between platforms. If anyone is really good at social media and would like to help us, I would welcome the help. Is managing a couple of different platforms and trying to consistently put out information that's helpful is a big challenge. So if anyone is interested in helping, figure out what we should be posting or just putting out the posts, feel free to send me an email at my chair caucus email, which should have been, available when you signed up for this. Oh, Madeline, thank you. Thank you. That's some help from Madeline. That's great. Oh, Madeline, I just remembered, you're on DEI, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. There is going to be a summit coming up in either August or September, right? And there's going
Yes,
to be a
I got
meeting
that email
tomorrow.
from Penny, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to the meeting tomorrow night,
Okay,
and I somehow missed the emails about it before, and I just got added to the committees. So our diversity, inclusion, and constituency caucuses together are going to have a summit and discuss, I guess, our new DEI chair, the state chair,
DeMarcus.
Marcus
Oh,
Carter.
yeah, DeMarcus.
And he seems to have a really, really great vision. Let me see, I saved it. Okay.
He was an excellent DEI chair when Dr. Fleming Reif was the state chair. So I'm very excited that he got elected to this position.
Great, great. Yeah, I appreciated Anita's work too. And DeMarcus, let's see, I'm just going to read this. It says, it's been suggested we have a public policy summit where the party's DEI chairs come together and constituency caucuses to correct the record on what DEI means for Iowa, as well as generate policy proposals that showcase how the IDP intends to put that into action. We want to drive positivity and introduce Iowa to the IDP's version of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the state. We would also like to take the opportunity to punch back at the Republicans' twisted vision of DEI and how that has resulted in multiple harmful and bigoted laws targeting different marginalized communities. Yeah, that's quite a big chunk of activism right there. And I am excited to talk about this tomorrow on this committee meeting. I guess I'll see you there, Madeline.
Yes, I will be there. And great news, I am able to get my Adderall fairly regularly now. So I am medicated again.
Awesome. Do you know if this meeting is open to others? I mean, like, could any of us come in?
I mean, I'll invite you in.
Oh, would you please?
I will have to look at the email, but I imagine it is open. I don't think we're actually like voting on anything. I think we're just discussing future plans. So I will do that tonight and send out an email, at least to Julie, who can send it to everyone.
Yeah, I would like to, because they're including the caucuses in this. I know
That's
that
what makes me
the
think it's
caucus
probably
chairs-
open.
Yeah, but I mean, if there's something you're interested in, I think, and you're free tomorrow night at 7.
I'll send you a link, and if they don't like it, they can.
I do have it
deal with me
already.
later.
But if you could find out whether others are welcome, that would be good.
I will do that. I have to leave a little bit early to go help my mom. My grandparents' 50th anniversary is this weekend, and we're throwing a party for them. And so I've got party planning to do.
Okay. All right.
It's my understanding that Democratic meetings are open. You know, I mean, even the voting, when we're at convention and stuff, keep track of who does what. I mean, it's like, there's not supposed to be any secrecy, I think. So I would be surprised if it wasn't open to anybody.
Yeah, it should be. And yes, Lori, I will definitely, I'll send this out. I'll probably send it out to the whole list, and I won't accidentally reveal all your email addresses because I accidentally did that last time. I've never done that before. My apologies. So I'm pretty much, I think, run out of things to talk about, but it's open, of course, open discussion. You know, is there something here that you would like to ask? Anyone that's new, any particular item you'd like to bring up? Your favorite activism, your main concern, your main gripe.
Well, I'll take it. No main gripes though, just two things to share.
She's gonna be main
No
gripes.
main gripes. So, the first one is I shared it on the discussion page right before the meeting started. They released that news article, I think it was last night, talking about there's been a lawsuit filed about the newest Medicaid provider, Molina, about conflict of interest, that the person who heads that up is a former director of Iowa Medicaid. So just to be keeping your eye on that. Molina doesn't go on until July 1st, I think it is. So that is a new developing story. In the past, I talked about the court case, Iowa's first right to read case. Where they're taking it to the 8th District Court, fighting about graduating a child that was not at an acceptable level of a reading level to like maintain job, etc. No new development on that as of yet. And then my final one, and this just kind of came out probably in the last day or two, but I found it today shortly before the meeting, is that the U.S. Department of Education, their Office of Special Education Programs, will be taking, and I'll post this in our group too, we'll be taking public comment through August 31st. They're looking at changing idea, and their idea of changing it is that in the past, if you had a child with an IEP and your child had Medicaid or a Medicaid waiver, you as the parent had the right to opt out from allowing the school district to bill, have access, etc. And they are looking at changing that, where the parent would not have that right, where the school could just bill. And there's a lot of problems kind of associated with that. I mean, not many parents are even realize that they can opt out. But the areas that a lot of disability advocates are focusing on is, of course, FERPA and HIPAA, as well as parents' rights when it comes to protecting information, and then everybody's favorite, fraud, which a lot of school districts within our state, as well as around the country, have been caught frauding Medicaid, because it's an easy way to get money, just by billing or wrongly billing. My school district, they got caught for that. And like Rob Sands, he did not want to pursue it because he said most school districts do it, which I'm like, if everybody does it, I mean, that doesn't make it cool. So that was a little disappointment with Rob Sands. But that's one of the problems, is the fraud. So, and there's also the big overlying problem, forgive me, I talk with my hands, is that OSIP wanting to make it where schools can just bill, but they're not talking about actually enforcing the funding or fighting to enforce the funding of IDEA. The law itself says that Congress is supposed to fund it 40%. They've never funded it 40%. I think the highest ever since 75 or whatever, when it went into effect, was 25%. I think right now it's around 12 or 14. So yeah, this is their idea of injecting money into it, especially as more states like ours are kind of going off the rails of the crazy train here and jump into vouchers, and we're losing money, and our disabled kids in schools will be the first ones to feel that impact, like they always are. So yeah, I'll post it in the discussion page where people can go, they can read up a little bit more about it, they can see what other disability advocacy groups are saying, and then go in and make your public comment. So thanks.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Was kind of interested, you mentioned Molina. So what again is the name of the person who's now the director of that? You said was the former director?
Yeah, I've got that news article up. Give me just one sec. It's Jennifer Vermeer, Vermeer. She's the CEO now of Molina.
Yeah.
She's Iowa's former Medicaid director.
Never heard of her.
Hey, I
I've
think I
never-
actually saw her on a Zoom one time, a long time ago.
I was gonna say, I've never heard of her either, but
Okay.
they
Yeah, that
just,
seems like a big
Well,
conflict of interest.
That, yeah,
Mm.
that's good information to know. I personally, I know a lot about the IDEA and whatnot, but those issues are most high on top of my list. Also, I'll type something in the chat that you can look at, but yeah, it's with these MCOs and with our public education, it's getting to be really bad because for public education, it's supposed to be free, appropriate public education, and it's going the opposite way. So it's disturbing for me, but yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Lori. I appreciate it.
no problem. The news article from the Iowa Capitol Dispatch, I put in the discussion on like the Facebook group page. And it goes into like other problems with Molina, like where they've been sued and like in different states and just kind of the
Yeah,
nightmare
I
that
heard
any
that.
MCO is. So, but yeah, the biggest one here is that she's gone back and forth saying how they've worked so closely with the state. Well, of course she has. She knows everybody there. They're her friends. So yeah, it was filed recently, and I mean, and it's the news articles from yesterday, but it was one that I kind of stumbled upon today just because I'm a little out of the loop. So
Thanks. Anyone else?
Okay, I'll do it. Wait, is my mic on?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I oh no. I just kind of lost my thought thing, just went over there. Oh, when I said I was writing about the ASD aspect from my, because ASD is on a spectrum. It's not like a linear spectrum, it's more like a circular kind of spectrum. And I'm writing about that from my point of view. And if you, because they're people that have already, from just reading stuff that I've written, like that are just they know people on the spectrum, but they don't know anything about the spectrum, and so they have a hard time understanding certain triggers, like just like certain little triggers that happen, and what happens with that, and they don't understand that it's not like a big deal. It's just like a little thing that kind of is a big deal, but just inside, not like a big deal. And I mean, it's a big deal inside. It's just not like a big deal. I don't know how to explain that better right now. So my whole point is maybe at some point when I feel comfortable, I would like to share with you. If
Do you
that's
work on
just what
your
I was going to
writing?
say. Okay.
Do you work on your writing for yourself right now? Or are you already sharing any writing?
I have a Substack.
You have a what?
A Substack.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is? Because I would like to check it out. I just Google your name then.
Yeah. If you look up my name, it should come up. They've started a new thing where they
Okay.
just with the name, or Unicorn Soul Patch. It,
Unicorn Soul Patch.
yeah, Unicorn Soul Patch.
I love it.
Yeah. So there were more stories. Well, there was at least one more story on there that was about the ASD, and strangely enough, not strangely enough, I gravitate towards other people, other neurodynamic. I like to use neurodynamic as the word. I gravitate towards those other types. So with ADHD, and so I have this really neat, because the communication issues are even more complex, because we're coming from each with our own wiring, you know. And
Yeah.
so it's nice that we get to unmask around each other.
Mhm.
It's really nice, but then there's another complication to it, and it adds another layer of depth of communication in that we have to learn each other's wiring is basically what we have to do. And it's very deep. It's meaningful on a whole nother level, where out in public you have to be whatever's around. You have to mimic constantly and mask. And what I've been doing lately is like the past few weeks is just not masking. I've just been like, I'm not gonna mask. I'm just not gonna mask. I'm gonna just be me. And it's been a little fun. a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, but sometimes I feel like I'm gonna fall off a tightrope. You know, I was at a function a Saturday night, and I was waiting in line to speak with someone who was busy speaking with someone, and I was hopping. I was actually hopping to get closer. But really what I was doing is hopping up and down, kind of stimming. I was stimming. And I had fun with it, but I think I might have embarrassed the person I was with. But she handled it well.
Thanks.
So
Thank you. The things going through my mind with my daughter and being with you all is really kind of supportive to me, and I'm looking forward to learning more from you on this email thread that I'm going to start. And because everyone, yeah, like you said, you have to get to know someone else's wiring. They're all different. And she's told me things like, Mom, I think you might have some spectrum things. And I'm like, what? You think that. Maybe because it's so diverse, right? Even among anyone on the spectrum, it's so diverse. But yet there's probably some things that you kind of totally get right away. Yeah.
yes, totally. You like plug in certain ways. You like plug in, and those connections are solid. But those other things are like, it's amazing in that respect.
Mhm. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And this is actually being recorded, and I'm going to share part of this meeting with Rita and Pam. And I'm okay with not sharing this part of the meeting where you're talking very candidly if you would rather not. I just want to make sure I say that. And I can edit it.
If anyone that knows me, and it's all over my social media, I am proudly on the spectrum. I embrace every nuance
Okay.
of
I got it now.
okay.
Let's keep being loud.
Okay.
And I had one more update. Gosh, what was it? Let me look at my notes here. Oh, okay. The last thing I've been involved with, which I'm still involved with, is called Dirt Road Radio, and I did my presentation last month on that, which is basically something that is trying to elevate the voices of people living in rural America, with the idea that if the more we share our authentic stories, the more we create empathy among our communities, and especially trying to understand where rural people are, you know, in the whole picture. Often feeling forgotten, written off, you know, you're in a red county, no one's going to bother to come out and talk to you. It's like a loss. It's not true, you know, and we can't write off any part of the country, and especially rural areas. So this Dirt Road Radio is kind of a place where we can share our music, stories, even podcasts. There's a couple podcasts that we've got lined up. We only have 4 so far, so we aren't really broadcasting which podcasts that we're going to be featuring. Not quite yet, but we do have a couple of musicians lined up. And these are just the ones that are independent musicians that we're supporting by playing their music. And they all have their other licensing agreements. And we'll also be playing, you know, some best 100, top 100 music too, but, you know, good choices in that. And it's not going to be strictly what you would stereotypically think of as rural. It's not going to be strictly country by any means. People listen to music all over the place. So one of the things that I particularly want to do is elevate voices of disabilities within rural areas and talk a little bit about issues that rural Americans face, especially in relation to whether, you know, you have transportation issues to a doctor's appointment. You live in Western Iowa and you have to go to Omaha for a consultant, and do you have the transportation you need? You know, there's a lot of different things that we could talk about as issues, but it's not particularly partisan. It is meant to be open to everyone, and it's meant to just create empathy by sharing real experiences and viewpoints, and diverse viewpoints too. So I just wanted to let you know that even though our Kickstarter didn't get funded, it finished last night, we're still moving ahead with this idea, and we're still looking for more, you know, funders, and looking at different ways of doing that. We may do another Kickstarter in the next few months, or maybe a different funding platform. But it's something I'm excited about, and that I never thought I'd be involved in, because, you know, I'm a deaf girl who never listens to the radio or podcasts. And here I am talking about creating some and being on the air, because everyone has a voice. Even if you don't think you're a radio worthy voice, your voice is worth being heard. So I just wanted to update you all on that a little bit, and we're going to continue on. We still have a great team I'm still very excited about it, and we're creating content still. So I'm interested in people's stories. If you have a story you'd like to tell, anything. It could be funny, it could be amusing, heartfelt. It could be mainly something that brings up a rural issue, which is fine. We've got one of our first pieces already done, which is Deb Vandergas piece called Unchecking the Box. And if you ever read that, that is about her growing up with more of a male presenting, gender identity, but she was not gay, not lesbian, but people kind of thought she was. And then she talks about how her kids are growing up in this different environment. And even though it's more accepting with LGBTQ, it is still a very difficult and frightening environment to be in Iowa. So that's one of our first pieces, and it's about 15 minutes long. And that's meant to show, her voice and her perspective. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea that we're definitely looking at broadening people's perspectives, but we're not trying to say we're a democratic, we're not trying to be partisan on the face of it, but we're just trying to be real. So thank you, AJ, for your comment. So I'm still pretty excited about that. I guess we're about done. If anyone has anything else, we'll be saying good night shortly.
Is that our cue to all say goodnight too?
Yeah, I guess. Unless anybody else wants to say anything. I know I have to go for the night, but I want to thank everyone for being here. Each and every one, you matter, and I like to tell everyone that. And most of my meeting, just know that you're appreciated and you matter. But thank you.
Thanks, Garrett.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good
Yep.
night.
Great to have you all on. Great to meet you, AJ, and great to meet you, Jen, finally.
It was so nice to meet everybody. Thanks so much and have a really good night.
Thanks. Thanks, Susan. Gonna save stuff. Stop recording.